Hey, what's up, everybody? Happy Wednesday. Today we're talking about mind evolution, right? I'm reading this book by Dr. Joe Dispenza. He's a neuroscientist, one of the top neuroscientists. His work is unmatched all around, and I actually love a lot of his work. I listen to a lot of his lectures, and I'm currently reading a book that he has called Evolve Your Brain. And one thing that I love about neuroscience and about talking about the brain is the fact that it's essential for us to actually progress in life, right? And ultimately, a lot of things that we face either genetically or things that we face in our environment that threaten us, we have the ability to evolve and adapt, right? And adapt and kind of get a little bit advanced further in life, right? So things that would normally plague us maybe back in the early 1800s really don't plague us anymore because the ability for the mind to process things, adapt, and step out of the norm and regroup and do different things. So I have some notes here I wanted to share with you guys about what I was studying. So the fact that we have the ability to choose and act on possibility is huge, right? It's so huge. But the fact that the way our brain is set up, a lot of our thoughts are habitual. And the fact that our thoughts are habitual, every time we have a thought, whether conscious or unconscious, our body makes a chemical. And that chemical that your body makes, you become addicted to those chemicals, right? So ultimately, everything in life that we see, we become so comfortable with it. We become kind of addicted to that emotion. So the platform in which you're thinking is right now, it becomes emotionalized. And that emotion, you become addicted to it so much to the point that when someone tells you something different, because you've memorized those emotions, you've memorized how you felt, and you've committed to that. And the way the brain works is that nerve cells that fire together, wire together, meaning that when you have a certain thought and you have it repeatedly, you start to forge connections in your brain. And those connections, every time certain circumstances come about, your brain fires in that same sequence, so you get the same results over and over and over again. That's what they say. The true identity of insanity is thinking the same thoughts over and over and over again, and that's pretty much how our brain works. But I want to know how much do you think you have control over how much of the job your mind is doing over your body, right? Because ultimately, your mind is really controlling your actions, your behaviors, and what you think. So you have so much more control in life to change. And the gift of mind evolution is the fact that the platform in which you learn right now, that's just a platform for you to advance higher. It's not for you to memorize these set of emotions and memorize how you feel in this current state of life and just be content with it. It's for you to evolve even further and further past that. And the whole process of evolving, it really has to start with the intuitive, I believe. I believe that as I evolved, it really came intuitively for me to find that connection. It really helped me when I stopped memorizing the perceptions and the beliefs that I had and really stopped and thought about certain things. It really forced me to kind of step outside of the norm. And that's the only time that change happens, when you step outside of the group, when you step outside of thinking that it's like pretty much normal. So to get change, you really, to evolve, it's actually definitely intuitive, because it's a risk that you take. And sometimes those risks that you take, it's a risk to save yourself, right? Because ultimately in this life, we have to, before we can save anybody, we have to save ourselves. So those intuitive, those intuitive feelings that you may have inside, that you may do something different, that were kind of going against something that maybe you've been taught all your life, or maybe something that you've felt all your life, because your brain memorizes chemicals because your brain produces chemicals every time you have a thought, you can become addicted to your body making those chemicals. And all this happens like a lightning storm in your brain and in your body without you even knowing it. It's just continuously moving. And science is what you know. It's what we have proven. So when we know so much about the human body and about the human mind, it's really important that we take these steps and these tools that are available to us to really progress our thinking to the next level. So I'm going to go ahead and look at some of my notes that I wrote, because I wrote a lot of notes for you guys today. So back to saying, like, how responsible are we as far as being the CEO of our body, of our actions? How responsible are we when it comes to our mind and our thinking? What else was I going to say? modifying your awareness. When you pay attention to pain, it's going to attract more pain, right? So it's kind of like what you focus on, it grows. So in anything in life, whether you focus on pain, whether you focus on your trauma, it's going to continue to grow. And if you redirect your attention elsewhere, then there's room for you to evolve, because now your brain has forged a new connection, so that way you can create that change in your life. And most of our change happens in the frontal lobe part of our brain, which is right behind the forehead, but just above the eyes. And this is where all evolution and all the types of growing mentally happens. And you really need that part of your brain, because ultimately there's so much that we haven't discovered, and there's so much that isn't known to the masses when it comes to just how we think, right? And I think that's very, very important, because there's some things that may be causing, some things we're doing on a natural basis that may be causing our mental breakdown, right? A cellular breakdown, right? Because we are so committed to thinking the same way. We're so committed to maybe believing a set of certain rules or hierarchy of I would say even, maybe dogma or different things like that. It doesn't really allow us to get the information in. And the way your brain is set up, it just kind of filters through some of the information is very important, because as soon as you feel a certain way, your brain just pretty much takes over. You really don't have the opportunity to stop and analyze and redo things. Hey Michael, hey Wesley, hey Gerard, hey Lori, good to see you guys here today. So I just wanted to put that on your mind about just the chemicals that your brain makes. Don't let that be a way where you're locked into just your thinking, to where you really can't advance. And that's like the most dangerous thing that you don't want to do, is lock yourself into a mindset that doesn't allow for advancement, doesn't really allow for evolvement. Because ultimately, if we don't evolve, if someone in your community doesn't evolve, if someone in your family doesn't evolve, if someone that you love doesn't evolve, then they fall behind, right? And the risk that you run from running that race of being legendary, of being different, of stepping outside of the norm, is the fact that you get to save maybe your future generations. And that to me, the more that I start thinking about things, the more I open my mind. Like, I have to have an open mind, because when I learned how capable my brain is of redirecting thoughts and computing different things, and when I think about that, when I think how powerful my mind is, I'm thinking like, why would God, the universe, whatever you call, why would I have all these controls and powers to just lie dormant, to just accept a set of beliefs, to just accept a set of behaviors and just cling to that and not leave my mind open for advancement, right? Because ultimately, some of the things that I may believe, there may be some things that you may believe about just normal things. Like, you may believe certain things about people who talk too much, right? And because you believe that, you're just so rigid in that thinking that you can't even mess with people like that. It just could be the smallest little beliefs, but the way you feel about it creates those chemicals that don't really allow you an escape route from that. So to evolve your mind is the greatest gift, that if you practice it, you have to practice that, because there's some things that I see in my life that I'm solely trying to evolve. I'm trying to evolve my business mindset. I'm trying to evolve my spiritual mindset. I'm trying to evolve my health mindset. Like, everything is on a continuous movement of evolvement, and I find myself like constantly stepping out of the norm to make those changes, right? I remember when I first stopped eating meat, that was completely out of the norm for a lot of people, and people couldn't understand that. And even now, when you talk about pork and you talk about different things about how bad it is, because people feel so deeply about meat, and they feel so deep, and they're addicted to the chemicals that they think about when they think about meat, that it's hard for them to let them go. So even it could be something small like that, but your brain can really lock you into a certain set of thinking that doesn't really allow you an outway to evolve. And evolving is just something that human nature cannot live without. We've been evolving for millions of years, and that evolvement, it really protects us to be able to advance in future. And you see what happens when people don't grow up, when people don't evolve, when communities don't evolve into higher consciousness. It's just detrimental. So that whole evolvement is also called neuroplasticity. So neuroplasticity is just the ability to make the brain forego its habitual pattern, right? So every day, about 97% of our thoughts are habitual, or what we thought the day before, right? So if we think what we thought yesterday and today, then we're going to get the same results. So to have neuroplasticity and the ability to adapt It really is the ability to forego how your brain would normally think about a situation and pause it and forge a new connection, right? And that is so important. And, you know, I think sometimes when people talk about the mind, because there's so much information that people don't know, they get kind of scared, like, what's all this mind stuff? But ultimately, it's science. It's things that we need to know. We have to know, because if we don't know it, then it's just like somebody driving a car. You have a car, we all have a standard issue, but the fact that I know how to drive and use the pedals and I have a license, I'm going to be able to go a lot further in life than you are. So the same thing about your brain. You want to be able to go further in life and not be limited by just the fact that, okay, you know, all I know how to drive is an automatic. So when it comes to stick shift, I'm just not going to even mess with it. I'm not even trying to get cars like that. So your options just become limited, not as limited, but just a little bit limited. So I just want to help you guys out there who are interested about the brain, interested about communication, and really understanding how to relate to people a little bit more. You really have to understand how they think. And I know that before I started studying the mind and the mindset, when people used to irritate me, I used to really take it personal. And then now I look at it like they're just doing behaviors that they're just memorized. They can't even help it, right? They can't even help it, because, and there's no way you can really help them, because if you try to confront that part of them that's memorized those beliefs, and that body is used to getting those chemicals from those type of thoughts that they think, it's just like a clash. Like there's nothing going to get through there. So now I just try to just help people who I can, people who are willing, because ultimately in that neuroplasticity, there has to be a willingness aspect to it. You have to be willing to have that change. You have to be willing to forego your habitual thinking and put it on pause and open yourself up to something bigger, something grander, a bigger vision, a bigger mindset, and open yourself up to feel uncomfortable, because ultimately, I know a lot of times when I go to different seminars, and one things that we do is, thank you, Chica. One thing that we do is we put our hands together. You put your hands together like this, whatever hand that thumb goes on top. That's like your brain actually in habitual thinking. It's like really, really comfortable. So if you take your hands apart and you put your hands back together and you replace the thumb, it's actually quite uncomfortable. That's the same thing that kind of happens in your mind mentally. It's really uncomfortable, probably like 100 times worse, especially if it's something that's confronting you that maybe you haven't heard before. But to me, that right there, just knowing that my brain could be stuck into something that though I thought was completely true, you couldn't tell me otherwise, you know, or you couldn't tell me, you couldn't change my mind about certain things. To know that my brain can get stuck in those patterns, and to think about it that there's a gain that someone will get if I'm stuck in a negative pattern, right? There's people that capitalize off of that, right? Like there's people who get payday loans all the time, right? Those are horrible, right? We know the interest rates are terrible for them, but guess what? Because some people are so locked into that pattern of how am I going to pay my bills? How am I going to get ahead? And this is the only way that I can do it. And they get addicted to that emotion that they feel when they go to this check advance place. Then there's the other person on the other side that they rank and they advance and they make a commission off of that, right? So your ignorance and some things, your ignorance or my ignorance or our ignorance can actually, yeah, you can be a slave to your devices of mentality. You actually can. And I think that we're going to the level of evolvement where people are starting to forego their habitual thinking and actually stop and say, no, I got to forge a new connection, because that's where all the good stuff happens, when you really start to be able to change your mind. Yeah, so being an individual requires you to be intuitive, and it requires you to break away from your normal. And it increases your chances of survival, honestly. And I think that the more I'm different, the more I'm increasing my chances of survival. So how often would you say that you give yourself room to forego your habitual thinking? How often do you give yourself a time to sit in conversations, or look at documentaries, or look at videos that may be uncomfortable, but yet they're shedding some knowledge on you that you may not have had before? I think that is totally important. I find myself always looking at things that I'm like, I would have never sat down and listened to, because ultimately there's so much information out there. Why would I neglect myself from, having that information? Why would I neglect myself from that mental evolvement, that mental advancement? So let's see. So There's a quote that I found in actually in the book, and it says, "We must deliver ourselves with the help of our minds. For one who has conquered the mind is the best of friends. But for one who has failed to do so, the mind is the greatest enemy." And I was like, damn, that is like so deep, right? And that's why when it comes to mindset, I'm on it like a tiger. When I listen to people, I listen to their mindset, because I know that if they can't conquer this mindset, that's going to be their greatest enemy. That is just the truth. And same thing with me. If I can't conquer this mindset up here in every area of my life, whether it be business, whether it be this and that, if I can't conquer that, then my mind and the way I habitually think, and the way that my body is addicted to those chemicals, the way it feels, then that becomes my greatest enemy, right? So they always say the greatest enemy doesn't live outside, it lives inside, because ultimately we can defeat the enemy inside. We can evolve, we can change, we can step outside the norm, we can be legendary, we can lead the truth, right? So that's what I'm all about. So don't let conventional thinking get in the way of your goals. And I know that sometimes the way I was brought up, because it's conventional, it's the way I've been raised, it gets in the way of my goals, right? And until I started studying the mind and digging deeper, I'm like, dang, so this affects me when I was little, and that's why I have this result and why I think this way, or this and that. So I have to really backtrack, and you have to do the same thing. As you start digging through your beliefs and start digging through the way you think and your habitual patterns of thinking, you'll have to start to figure out how am I thinking, how are my emotions getting in the way of me achieving my goals and dreams. And it all starts with the mindset, because first you have a thought, and then your body makes a chemical, and that cycle just continues to go. And we don't do anything that we don't feel good about, period. So what's keeping you from experiencing the freedom of an exhilarating life, right? Because life is exhilarating, right? If we just really took that attitude that life is exhilarating, that we should learn new things every day, then you know, nothing would keep us from our freedom. We will be just ever so slowly like inching forward and moving forward in life, because freedom and exhilaration is what life should be about. It should be like so enthusiastic. I'm gonna go through my notes, you guys. So that's pretty much what I want to talk to you guys today. I want you guys to be stuck into a box of thinking. I want you to be open. I want you to be loving. I want you to really understand what humanism is. Like, I just learned that word, so I was like, I'm a humanist. I'm a person that loves people. I love to have an open mind. I love to look at humanity and see all its beauty, and see how minds how they can overcome. I've been reading today about people who have healed themselves mentally of physical ailments that only that you would require medical treatment, and terminal illnesses, using their mind to actually heal and repel their body, because ultimately we can think ourselves sick, we can think ourselves healthy, right? So there's people that have actually thought themselves healthy, thought themselves into better relationships, and how you think is what you attract. And I'm a firm believer in that. And I think that's why I'm always so like jovial and so always happy, because I know that I attract good things, and I truly believe that. And because that's a belief, I look for evidence to confirm that in my life all the time. I'm looking for evidence. I'm looking for evidence that I'm the luckiest girl in the world. I'm looking for evidence that, I have the greatest opportunity in this world right now to evolve my brain and do something great and something powerful in this world. So I just wanted to drop that on your mind. Don't get addicted to the emotions that you have right now. Don't be addicted to the beliefs, because ultimately if you could just step outside, we are not our beliefs. You could just step outside of that for just a second, you would understand that those two things are totally separate, right? Just like you can look at someone else and you're not inside of them, so you're not going through the turmoil that they're going through, and you can see things from a different lens. It's the same way we have to do with ourselves. We have to sometimes step outside of ourselves and look at ourselves from a different lens, and look at information from a different lens, because ultimately all we have is the way our brain has been wired. We don't have any other set of tools. You have to go get those tools. You have to learn those tools. You have to seek out those tools, because ultimately they're just not there. They're not there for a reason. They're not there in our school systems for a reason, because they like to keep our experiences congruent, right? That's how we're able to know where we are in our environment. We're able to know we are in an environment because everything is congruent. The models of our experience are pretty much the same. That's why when you get with somebody, you're like, why the hell did they do that? I don't do that. That's not how I was raised, right? Because that model ain't congruent. So when you run into models that aren't congruent with your experience in your life, you have to learn how to adapt. You got to have that neuroplasticity. And that neuroplasticity shouldn't let you judge. It should let you look a little bit deeper. It should let you quiet yourself. It should let you forge a new connection. Because right now, everything that we know our brain has files for it, like little bitty files. Like the information that we get represents, it comes to us, and then our brain stores it in all these little files. That's why as I'm talking right now, you have a file of every word of what it means. You have it already inside your brain, inside a file. So your brain processes that in a second. But when you don't have, when I tell you something that maybe kind of be foreign, you don't have a file for that, your brain has to generalize that. And when you generalize things, you cut off a lot of information that was there that doesn't really fit inside your little box, right? So one of the great teachers, Ray Higgins, he always has this diagram. He says, put your fingers together like this, right? So we do this, everybody does this. He's like, everything in my awareness is inside this little circle right here. Everything that I'm aware of is right here. And everything outside of my awareness, I have to learn. I have to be adapted to. I have to trust my intuitive self that my brain can compute. It can handle it. So I just want to drop that on your mind, you guys, because one of my fears, and especially for the inner city and the African American community, I hate for us to be so sometimes locked in to certain ways of thinking and habitual ways of thinking just out of habitual how we feel. It doesn't really allow us a breakthrough. It doesn't really allow us to evolve. So the first part of evolving is giving yourself the gift of mind evolution, all right? So I know some of you guys are really liking this, and I'm going to have some really good things for you guys. Some of you guys are going to want more. You guys are going to want to enroll into my NLP online course that I'm going to be launching very, very soon. I'm really, really excited to get that out to you guys. So I'll let you guys know how that's coming along, and where you guys can get that and where you guys can pick that up. And for now, hey Chandria, hey, what's up? Hey Dr. G Davis, what's up? Tiffany, how are you today? Anybody have any questions for me? Anything about mind evolution, about giving yourself the gift of mind evolution? You guys can let me know. I'll look over my little notes really quick, and I'm just going to leave you with this quote once again because I think it's just a great quote. It says, we must deliver ourselves with the help of our minds. For one who has conquered the mind is the best of friends. But for the one who has failed to do so, the mind is the greatest enemy, right? All right, peace and love, you guys. Thank you guys for joining my Facebook Live. I hope you guys have an amazing evening out there wherever you are, and talk to you soon. Peace out.